Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me and welcome to Van Halen album ranking. So the band formed way back in 1972, spanning their 48-year career. They had 3 different frontmen for the band. They recorded 12 studio albums. Join me as we count down this legendary band's catalog. But before we get started, if you are new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with Van Halen album ranking. So we got 12 albums to count down here, and coming in at number 12, Van Halen III from 1998, 11th studio album from the band. As first to feature new vocalist Gary Cherone coming from Extreme. The pairing sounded good on paper, and I think for the most part it worked quite well. Gary does a great job in terms of the vocals on it. Best part was that he was willing to perform both Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth material live in concert, so it made the concerts really quite interesting. But the album itself seemed to lack identity. From a piano bit that opens it up, the songs that try to recreate hits of the past. Then there's the varied nature of some of these songs. I think too much variedness throughout. All of this, though, would have been fine in my opinion, but it's when Eddie Van Halen actually takes lead vocals on the last track that just made the whole thing a little bit too much to try and swallow. I've tried to really like this album, and there are some really good high points on it, but in all, it just doesn't quite reach the rank of the other ones. This album here would be the last one for 14 long years. Okay, coming in at number 11, Balance from 1995, 10th studio album from the band. Last one to feature Sammy Hagar. First time that the band, in my opinion, began to lose focus. They began to jump on trends that were going on instead of setting them as they had with previous albums. They changed their sound to match a more contemporary style at the time. It was darker and more moody at places. They minimized the guitar solos on here. The instrumental pieces on here had a dissonant sound to them, tended to break the flow instead of linking things together as it had done on previous albums. Still, though, there's a lot to love about this album. I do really like it. I saw the band on tour for this one. The first 4 tracks that kick off the album are amazing. It's a great start. But for me, it's actually the last 2 songs on the album that I think are the best tracks and do a very solid closing of the album itself. Coming in at number 10, A Different Kind of Truth from 2012, 12th studio album from the band, and reunion with David Lee Roth, first to feature new bassist Wolfgang Van Halen, son of Eddie Van Halen. And while he was replacing Michael Anthony, the original bassist of the band, we do have to forgive Wolfgang. It's actually Wolfgang who got the band back together and Eddie to record an album. So even though he's replacing a beloved member of the band, he did some great stuff for us, and he's a fantastic musician in his own right. This album, though, in my opinion, is an excellent return to form album, partly due to the fact that the band actually used songs from before they were signed and developed them into new songs. You can see behind me there the album Firestarter, which is a collection of those demos from before the band was signed. I've actually done a review on that, and we'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested. But those older songs that were worked into newer ones, they then also mixed in newer material as well. This album, in all, having a very classic sound to it, and while not quite reaching the heights of those first 6 albums with David Lee Roth on it, it does come pretty close at certain points. And in all, hearing this album, it was like a good friend returning home after a long time, which I think is a solid thing to say about this album here. Okay, coming in at number 9, Fair Warning from 1981, fourth studio album from the band. And despite it actually being the lowest selling album of the Roth era, it's a fantastic album in my opinion, opening with the stellar track Mean Street and featuring the huge hit Unchained. But then there's some oddities on this album too, in particular the mix on the song So This Is Love. The volume goes up and down on it, between its chorus and refrain on it. I find it really jarring, so it puts me off a little bit. One of the most interesting instrumental songs is on this album here, Sunday Afternoon in the Park. While it sounds like it's a bass solo being played by Michael Anthony, it's actually Eddie Van Halen using a heavily synthesized Layton guitar. But man, is it a monstrous track, and it must have just gone down amazing in concert, I can only imagine. Coming in at number 8, Women and Children First from 1980, third studio album from the band. First album to feature all original songs on it. There were no cover songs on this album here. The band also takes a heavier style on this album. It's got the killer 1-2 punch of tracks like And the Cradle Will Rock, Everybody Wants Some. You guys remember that song from the movie Better Off Dead with John Cusack on it? That was my introduction to the song, so that's at least how I got turned on to it. But the rest of the songs on here, while they aren't as big as those first 2 songs on here, they're solid, they're impressive. It's a very consistent album from start to finish, and for me at least, that's one of the ways I like these albums. All right, coming in at number 7, Diver Down from 1982, fifth studio album from the band. Most fans complain about this album here is that it has too many cover songs on it. 5 of the 12 songs are cover songs on it. But in my opinion, Van Halen has always done cover songs really well, usually making it their own, sometimes so much so you don't even know it's a cover song, which for me is what this album is here. Until years later getting into this, I didn't even know that some of those songs were cover songs on here. The album also features 3 instrumental songs on here, which for fans, some have also complained about that part of this, because once you remove the cover songs and the instrumental tracks on here, there's only 4 original songs of performance on here by the whole band. So but my thing is, with the instrumental tracks, they did a really great job linking the album on here, building the anticipation throughout. For me, this album is just one big party album from start to finish. It screams summertime. It's one of those albums I break out every summer to listen to, which for me at least is why it comes in at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we've got OU812 from 1988, 8th studio album from the band. Featuring a much more 80s style production, as of course that was the time, but more so than any of their other albums. But that doesn't stop the album from rocking. You got tracks like Mine All Mine and Feels So Good. In particular, that is my favorite Van Halen song that is not one of the hits on it. I love that song. But what keeps this album from being much higher in the countdown is the confounding last track that's on this album called Apolitical Blues. It has no character or relation to the sound of the band or the band's style. It's just, to me, completely out of place. It is a straight blues song, as the title states. It's a cover of a Little Feat song, and I do like Little Feat a lot, but this song, as I said, just really seems out of place on here. And it it just changes the flow that it has been building on this album. It had had killer momentum prior to this, and to me it is just kind of all wrecked right at the tail end of it. So for me at least, I always stop the album at track number 9, and I pretend that Apolitical Blues is a bonus track that I am uninterested in. Okay, coming in at number 5, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, 1991, 9th studio album from the band. First one featuring Ted Templeman returning as producer on it since 1984, both the year and album, of course. Though this album here is not as big as the 2 previous Hagar albums that he was part of, for me, this is where everything comes together for this particular lineup of the band. The album is just solid start to finish on here. While, there's tracks on here that break new ground, like Right Now. It's got plenty of the classic sound and moments on it that we love from the band, like Pound Cake, Man on a Mission, The Dream Is Over. And the one instrumental that's on this album, 316, while different, it doesn't take away from the album as a whole. And then you've got the closing track on here, Top of the World, which just ends this album on a super high note and is one of my favorite songs from the band. Coming in at number 4, 5150 from 1986, 7th studio album from the band. First to feature new vocalist at the time, Sammy Hagar, coming in from Montrose, and of course a hugely successful solo career. The album opens with the song Good Enough, which is a song that I think could have easily have been sung by Roth and appeared on any of the Roth era albums. So it was a great track to open with, easing fans in with that transition in the lineup. But track 2, by that song, Why Can't This Be Love, it shows that the band was going to be innovating, trying new things. They weren't going to just sit back and recreate the Roth era as they go forward. For me, Sammy Hagar was the right man for the job to be able to do this. He provided new depth for the band itself and vocal ability that really hadn't been present with Roth when he was in the band. Roth really provided a different aspect for them. The album itself is just one high point after another on here, which for me at least is why this album rises all the way to number 4. Coming in at number 3, Van Halen II, 1979, second studio album from the band. This one here, from the start of it with the slow build of the first track, You're No Good, then it elevates in height to the second track with Dance the Night Away. You've got the party sounds of third track, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, and the album, it just continues on that path all the way through. It's a pure Van Halen sounding album from start to finish. It's everything we love rolled into one on this album. It also features the songs DOA, Women in Love, Beautiful Girls. There's just no shortage of classic sounding tracks on this album. While the album itself does come in at number 3 for me, it did fight tooth and nail and could have easily come in the number 2 or number 1 spots of this countdown. But coming in at number 2, we've got 1984 from 1984, 6th studio album from the band. Last to feature original vocalist David Lee Roth. From the opening synthesized chords of instrumental track 1984, that just really elevated the anticipation of what was about to happen, sort of announcing that something huge was about to take place. We all knew this album was a shifting point for Van Halen, and at this point they had just really arrived in a big way. And it moves into the poppy keyboard-laden jump. It just kept on moving into the driving sounds of Panama. And then, those first 3 tracks, each one of those provided something new in each one of those. The album just continues that way all the way through, elevating with the iconic instrumental build of Hot for Teacher, with, one of the most iconic guitar solo instrumental, or not instrumental, but openings of all times in one of the songs. And then if that wasn't enough, you've got the next song in here, I'll Wait, which really foreshadows what was going to be happening on their next album, 5150. But for me, this album is where it's at. It was actually the first Van Halen album I bought, which is probably why it's actually jumping in here at number 2. All right, coming in the top spot, we've got Van Halen 1 from 1978, debut studio album from the band, and from the start of the car horn into that infamous bass line of the first song on here, rock music was changed forever with the release of this album. But, it's actually the second track on here, Eruption, that changed everything in my opinion. In 1 minute and 42 seconds, Eddie Van Halen redefined the guitar and how it could be played. That alone, I think, would have warranted this album here being in the top spot, but it's the rest of the songs on here too, featuring 4 more hits. You've also got the classic cover of the Kinks song, You Really Got Me, the career-defining song, Ain't Talking About Love. In all, the album in its 11 tracks at only 35 minutes long is not only one of the greatest debut albums of all time, but it's also one of the greatest albums of all time, in my opinion. enough said. All right, there you go. That is Van Halen album ranking. Don't forget to check the description for links to related videos. In particular, you can check out that album Firestarter behind me that's got the early Van Halen demos on it, me talking about that and discussing that if you're interested. And if you enjoyed this video, please share it out on social media. Help spread the word that way. I would also appreciate that. Certainly, let me know your thoughts, your comments. I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.